Hey everybody, welcome back to this week's episode of The Golden Bolt. My name is still Kevin. If it looks a little different in here, that's because this is actually not my house this time. So I figured because we're reviewing a brand new game for a brand new audience, I'd bring somebody new to the table. So everybody, welcome Nico to the show. So let's have Nico introduce himself. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Nico. I'm a new gamer, and the reason that I am on this video is because I have zero experience with the Ratchet & Clank series, and because it's a new reboot of the series, it would be cool to get a new gamer's perspective.
That's exactly it. So, like you said, we're tackling the brand new Ratchet & Clank game on PS4, as I told you guys last week, and we're going to see how it holds up to the original. I'm going to review it mostly from a new player's perspective, with a little bit in there for, classic fans who I'm sure have already beaten the game 3 times over. So, let's get started.
Well, fast forward a decade after the original game came out, and here we are. A movie's being planned for the Ratchet series, and Insomniac was offered a chance to tie in. Thinking they could use it as an opportunity to do the original game some justice, they hop on. A couple years later, it launches as the game based on the movie based on the game. With the reimagining, Insomniac had the chance to give new fans a jumping point into the series that was more accessible and in line with the current series style, so they did. That's really all there is to it. Obviously, this game just came out a week or two ago, so there's gonna be spoilers for both the game and the film the game is based on. I've read the novelization of the film, and I know what happens in it, and we'll be discussing some of that in this review. I'll warn you when to skip ahead.
The game opens up with the prisoner named Shiv Helix being led by guards toward his cell. When the doors open up, we find Captain Quark being massaged. Okay. So Shiv looks on in amazement, telling Quark,
"I used to dream of being arrested by you."
Quark finds out there's a holo game being made based on Ratchet & Clank's first adventure with him, and he begins to tell Shiv his side of the story.
Yep, we've got a frame story here. We open up our actual adventure to see Ratchet preparing to sneak out to compete at the Galactic Ranger tryouts on Velden. Before he can make it out though, his adoptive father figure Grimroth catches him and tells him to fix a customer's ship before he goes. In this universe, Ratchet's garage is now actually a chop shop. Then it's off to action. Ratchet passes the test and then Quark comes on stage to hype up the crowd about their search for a new Galactic Ranger. If this scene here looks a bit different than the game to you, it's because it's from the movie.
Ratchet & Clank jumps back and forth between film scenes and in-game cutscenes to tell its story. The game is effectively the film's plot with like 10 more planets thrown in so that we can actually have a game to play here. Anyway, Quark tells Ratchet he didn't make the cut, and a heartbroken Ratchet goes home.
At the same time, we see Chairman Drek watching over his Warbot manufacturing plant on Quartu. You know where this is going. The robot's a defect, blah blah blah, it's Clank. He escapes automatic destruction and is chased by Drek's robot henchman, Victor Von Ion. Victor Von Ion chases Clank through the robot factory, but Clank's able to escape. Victor fires a missile at his ship, the ship is damaged, and Clank crashes on Velden. Ratchet saves him, and the two exchange names.
I suppose my proper designation is Warbot Defect B54290. Maybe I'll just call you Clank.
And then they have to fight through a Blarg search party on their way back to Grimm's garage. Clank insists that they go find the Galactic Rangers to warn them about Drek's army, and Ratchet lies and says he's a Galactic Ranger to help convince Clank to let him join. By the way, they never mention that again in the game, just keep that in mind. In space, they get a distress signal from planet Novalis, and they're shot down by the Blarg on their way to investigate. From here, the first chunk of the game is sort of focused around finding Quark and the Rangers, with Ratchet and Clank doing other odd jobs on the side so that we can revisit levels from the first game. The duo meets a load of interesting characters, from pro hoverboarder Skid McMarks, to the nerdy robot expert Al from Al's RoboShack, to Quark's personal fitness Wait, where'd she go? Yeah, the game takes liberties with the first game's plot, and it often works really well. For example, you go to Iridia because the mayor on Novalis asks you to check on his nephew Skid. Characters like Helga were trimmed out of the game though, as you already have the swing shot from the start. And of course, I couldn't do this review without mentioning the plumber.
Did that guy just slide down a sewer pipe?
That is all.
See you in the next reboot.
Okay, the spoilers are going to start now. Click right here if you want to skip to the end of the story section, and if not, you've been warned. Upon meeting with the plumber, Ratchet and Clank receive an infobot detailing Drek's plans to attack and destroy the Rangers so they can create their own hybrid planet. When the duo goes to Metropolis, now called Aliro City, to warn Quark, they find that they showed up too late. Drek's warbots are already wreaking havoc on the Ranger HQ. Ratchet and Clank engage in a dogfight to take down the dropship, saving the city and becoming immediate heroes. Quark is begrudgingly forced to make them Rangers, and they're given basic training. Here we meet the four Rangers: Quark, the technology and planning expert Ilaris, and the 2 frontline rangers, Brax and Cora. These 3 new characters are sort of just thrown at us and we're expected to like them. I don't like them. Well, that's not entirely true. I don't mind Ilaris or Brax, even if they have maybe 20 to 30 lines between the 2 of them, but what I do mind is Cora. Voiced by Disney star Bella Thorne, she is just awful. Like really, really awful. Not her existence or anything, just her performance. Every single line she says is cringy just because of how poorly it's delivered. She literally just reads the script and adds edgy emphasis over some words.
Drax gonna throw everything he has at us. Not bad, Ratchet. We're at the defense cannon, but it looks like the system's on lockdown. We need to get this thing online, and fast. Just shoot him!
Anyway, Quark gives them a top secret mission to go to Drek's Blarg research station.
Here they encounter the Blargian Snagglebeast, but Quark doesn't betray them yet. He plays dumb and pretends not to know that the Snagglebeast was there. They take the beast down and learn that a mad scientist named Dr. Nefarious is working for Drek, and that he's been experimenting with jetpack technology on planet Gaspar.
For those of you unaware, Dr. Nefarious is a fan-favorite villain in the Ratchet series. That's all I'm gonna say for now, though. Quark orders them to go grab a jetpack, and here they learn that Drek is planning to attack the Star Watch defense cannon on planet Battalia, so that they can cripple galactic defenses and move forward with their plans. Ratchet and Clank, with Cora's help I guess, defend the cannon and save Battalia, and the Rangers plan their attack on the Blarg homeworld of Kortu. Now it's important to note that 100% of what I just discussed is filler in regards to the film. Again, I've read the novelization of the movie, and the plot thus far would have been summed up as Ratchet meets Clank, they go to Illyrio City, and then they go to Kortu with the Rangers. If anything I'm saying about the game sounds disjointed right now, it's because it is. Movie cutscenes are just plugged into the plot wherever possible, and extensive liberties are taken with the film's story arc. We get zero characterization for the new Rangers, Clank and Ratchet never bond, things just sorta happen. I thought the game would be an expanded version of the film's plot, but somehow it's actually a dumbed down version. Okay, back to the plot. They go do stuff on Kortu, and they find out about the deplanetizer and the plans to destroy planet Novalis. The Rangers rush to the deplanetizer and try to stop Drek, but are caught up in a dogfight with Victor Von Ion. They take him down and he attacks the Ranger base ship, the Starship Phoenix, where Clank is able to outwit him and kill him with his weakness, water. Meanwhile, Ratchet infiltrates the deplanetizer because the other Rangers are useless, and is almost able to redirect the blast in time before Drek captures him. While Drek's explaining his plan to Ratchet, they pass by a room where we see Quark just hanging out. Quark betrayed the Rangers solely because Ratchet and Clank were stealing all of his thunder. The game actually doesn't tell you that at all, by the way. In the film version of the events, Quark is tricked into joining Drek and doesn't know that Nefarious is involved at all. But in the game version of the events, Quark clearly knows that Nefarious is involved, but he joins anyway. It's never explained. Drek shoots Ratchet off into space in a ship and makes him watch as planet Novalis gets completely destroyed. Oh, by the way, Cora was born on Novalis, not that she ever really mentions it or anything.
The Novalians were able to evacuate in time, but billions lost their homes.
Wait, hold on, what? When was there an evacuation? I mean, come on, really? How can I feel bad if literally everybody is safe? That's just ludicrous. We're then jumped ahead a while, presumably, as Ratchet tells Clank he's not going to rejoin the Rangers because he blames himself for what happened. Clank says like 3 sentences and then Ratchet's suddenly convinced to join back up. Wow. Drek's plan now is to destroy Umbrus, which has a volatile core that will conveniently cause a chain reaction and destroy the entire sector if ignited.
They go to the Gadgetron homeworld of Calebo 3... Calebo 3? Calebo the 3rd?
Calibo 3.
Calebo 3, to get a Hollow Guys to infiltrate the deplanetizer. Then they infiltrate the deplanetizer.
Meanwhile, Quark yells at Drek about attacking the Rangers and breaking their deal when Nefarious shows up.
Do I feel my ears burning?
Quark is kicked out of the room, and Nefarious turns Drek into a sheep. Yep, Nefarious hijacks the story. I'm actually completely okay with this one because it highlights Quark's mistake and his attempt to make things right. They play Drek up as just looking out for money in this universe anyway, so it works out that a true villain takes his place. What I'm not okay with is that Nefarious gets pretty much 0 screen time until this moment. This is meant at least secondarily as a game to introduce new fans, and we get a fan-favorite villain hijacking the plot with 0 hype up for newbies. Again, the film does a much better job at this, and it's 90 minutes long. How do you dumb down the plot of a film that's already being dumbed down from its source material for a longer experience? I don't get it. So Ratchet is able to find the core of the deplanetizer and destabilize it, so that the Rangers can use a tractor beam to pull it out of its target. But then Quark shows up and fights Ratchet? didn't he just feel remorse for joining Drek and destroying Novalis? I get that he's still jealous, but he clearly knows the plan to destroy more planets, possibly killing billions, so why does he just suddenly revert to villainy again? Whatever. Once Ratchet and Clank beat Quark apologizes. Nefarious then shows up and Quark tells Ratchet to arrest him, naming him head of the Galactic Rangers. However, Brax uses his tractor beam at the most inconvenient time, and Quark and Nefarious struggle with the shifting gravity while fighting one another. Nefarious activates the deplanetizer, but it barely misses Umbris. Then Ratchet chases down Nefarious' giant mech and stops the scientist in an awesome jetpack battle near an artificial sun. Nefarious falls into the sun once defeated, and the deplanetizer begins to fall into Umbris' orbit. They teleport out of the station, and the game flashes to Quark finishing his frame story while he and Shiv are picking up trash in Aliro City. Ratchet and Clank happen to pass by, and while they're talking, Shiv steals the duo's ship. Ratchet invites Quark to help stop Shiv, and the game fades to the credits. I know it seems like I've gone on far too long with a plot that's actually easier to summarize than the original, but I have to get out every facet that's wrong with this game's plot. The story is an absolute afterthought here, with careful steps being made to try and hype up the film without completely spoiling it, and it fails miserably at that. We get all the events of the film without any of the depth the film seems to have. I didn't think there'd be any way that the plot, specifically the characterization, would end up worse than the first game, but it did. There are only two redeeming qualities to this plot, and oddly enough, it's Quark and a side adventure on planet Poketaru. We get some good, if conflicting, backstory and fun dialogue on Poketaru with Grimroth's brother. Apparently the siblings both came from another galaxy as adults and grew up on Poketaru as kids, so that's a little strange. And Quark, although he's inconsistent at times, actually has an understandable path to evil, and he has a clear redemption at the end. Everything else is just... it's so empty that I have to unveil a new ranking for this game's plot. Originally, this ranking was going to be planned to define a category that performed so poorly that absolutely nothing could be redeemed from it. But in this case, I'm going to use it to describe what's simply a work in progress. I can't judge this game's plot fully until I see the film it's based on. Yes, I've read the novel, but that's not the same as seeing the movie. And without the source material here, this story gets no bolt from me. Alright, we're past the tough part, guys. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, the gameplay here is fantastic, arguably the best in the series. It masterfully follows the modern style of Ratchet titles while holding true to the roots of the original game. If you're not familiar, every Ratchet game after the first implements a strafe mode. You hold one of the left triggers to shift into what's essentially a third-person shooter camera style, with the camera locked directly behind Ratchet. The weapons all aim appropriately in this setting too. Auto-aim still exists as in the first game as well, but it's an option that can be turned off or on depending on the player's level of experience. Speaking of these weapons, there are 15 of them, one of which is currently a pre-order exclusive. Although this is a remake of the first game, only 2 weapons return from that game. The rest are mostly PS3 weapons with a couple of new ones thrown in for good measure. Weapons of note include the franchise staple Groovatron, which makes every enemy, and I mean every enemy, dance to some funky tunes. Mr. Zircon, a smack-talking robot buddy that shoots everything and anything in its path. The all-new Pixelizer, which turns enemies into old-school video game sprites. And the Sheepinator, which can turn pretty much any enemy, bosses included, into a sheep. Of course, there's still the franchise staple pistol, rocket launcher, and sniper weapons as well. The arsenal is versatile, and Ratchet can handle any given situation in this game, a stark contrast from some of the issues I mentioned in the original. Plus, the gadgets that return from the first game, like the Trespasser and the Swing Shot, don't need to be equipped anymore to be used. This goes a long way to make the game much more convenient. And in this game, the quick select menu pauses this time around, making it useful and making switching around on the fly a breeze. And then there's the Bouncer. This is the pre-order weapon, a remake of a fan-favorite gun from the second game, Going Commando. It shoots a big bomb that explodes into little bombs that chase down enemies. It was pretty much game-breaking in Going Commando, and it's about as good right here. I had to actually stop myself from using it at a certain point because the game was just too easy when the Bouncer was involved, especially when it was upgraded. Oh yeah, upgrades. This game has 2 forms of upgrades. There's an experience system that levels up weapons to a maximum of level 5 simply by using them on enemies, and then there's the Raritanium upgrade tree. The weapons get increased damage, range, fire rate, etc. as they level up. And as for Raritanium, remember how I mentioned Raritanium once in the first game's review because it's, well, rare? Well, it's not nearly as rare in this universe.
At the Gadgetron weapon vendor, Ratchet can spend Raritanium on an upgrade tree for each weapon. Each node on the tree can be a more passive upgrade like increased ammo supply, increased duration for things like the Groovatron or Zircon, or special hidden bonus abilities. The hidden abilities are unlocked when you unlock every surrounding node, and they're unique to every weapon.
These abilities can be something like enemies exploding after being defeated by the Pyrocitor, spreading the flames to other enemies, a chain morph for the Sheepinator that morphs nearby enemies in a huge chain reaction, and so on. These two upgrade systems in tandem help flesh out the gameplay even further, and this positive feedback loop I mentioned last review gets even more addicting as a result. On top of these, your health automatically gains experience and increases from fighting enemies too, and there are even more passive bonuses for finding holo cards. While all of what I mentioned just now has been a staple in previous Ratchet games for years, holo cards are completely new to this game. From beating enemies or finding hidden packs around the world, Ratchet and Clank collect trading cards for important characters, weapons, or levels from almost every game in the series. These cards fill out sets of 3 that, when completed, give a passive bonus such as a 5% increase in bolts collected from every enemy, to increase damage output to your wrench, and so on. There's a card set for every weapon as well, and once they're completed, you can unlock the ability to buy an Omega weapon for that weapon in challenge mode. The Omega weapons have 5 more levels and an even bigger Raritanium tree for the player to explore, adding even more replayability to an already replayable game. However, it's not the most replayable Ratchet game out there. While the hoverboard races return and somehow get even more fun in this game, the remake doesn't have an arena in it. Combat arenas, which debuted in Going Commando, have been a staple in the series, allowing players to easily level up their weapons and make bolts faster. Without an arena, the weapons feel somewhat poorly balanced for the game as a result. It is flat out impossible for a normal player to hit level 5 on most of Ratchet's weapons before the game is done. This is in stark contrast to the rest of the series, where players had at least some opportunity to get every weapon up to snuff somewhere. Moreover, weapons are sold to you in an odd order, leaving some weapons incredibly underpowered when you pick them up. A weapon like the Buzz Blades, which shoots out blades that bounce off enemies and walls, comes halfway through the game and feels incredibly weak for the level it's sold on. It almost feels like the game was supposed to have some sort of arena for you to grind in, but that never materializes in the game. What feels even worse is that in challenge mode, weapons level up like crazy. There's no gradual progression once you hit challenge mode that makes you want to replay the game again and again. You just become overpowered and that's it. I actually got my Buzz Blades from level 1 to level 5 on one enemy in challenge mode. The same is true for the Rhino no matter when you get it. I leveled it up within seconds as soon as I got it. What's the point of giving it levels at all then? If I don't feel the progression as a player, there's no reason for it. Hell, even my bolts in challenge mode go from 0 to 100 immediately. When you replay the modern style Ratchet games, you have a bolt multiplier that can increase the amount of bolts you get from enemies or crates, and it goes from a 2x multiplier to a 20x multiplier as you kill more enemies. Even without this, the game's economy falls apart immediately in challenge mode. You can get literally 100,000 bolts from one stack of crates at times. It doesn't really feel earned when you're just given this power immediately, and that's personally my biggest issue with the game from a gameplay standpoint.
That's not the only flaw the gameplay has though. As a new player, at times the screen has too much going on and it gets a little bit overwhelming. This is something that tends to go away with time though. However, the enemy shots are incredibly hard to see on the screen at times and that never changes. Their shots are these tiny yellow pellets that get completely overshadowed if anything else is on the screen, and their aim is spot on. At times it feels like you really can't avoid a hit.
One of the only other flaws I have with the gameplay is in the level design of the new levels. There's only 2 new levels in the game, the Deplanetizer and Planet Core 2, and both of these levels just kinda suck. The design of the new levels is clearly an afterthought compared to redesigning the old levels, so at times it feels lazy. These are very minor things in what is otherwise a nearly perfect experience though. Casual players wouldn't even notice my nitpicks on the replayability of challenge mode, but it's worth noting to the core fan. Otherwise, it's a fantastic Ratchet experience that truly holds up to the original. Every level brings back enemy designs from the first game, a move that Insomniac by no means had to do, but they did it out of love to the original. These are not things that new fans would even notice, but it's something that old fans will eat right up. And it's a testament to quality for the original game how conducive it is to a spot-for-spot remake of level design, for almost half of the game's levels at that. I don't know how many games could go through such a facelift without having to change much at all. The gameplay of Ratchet & Clank on PS4 is absolutely gold. It's got the tiniest of problems, but for new and old players alike, there's nothing that'd stop me from recommending it wholeheartedly. This is the best looking game made to date. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts. Nothing in my eyes beats this out. I don't care that it's cartoony. I don't care that it's 30 frames per second, because it delivers as perfect an experience visually as you will ever find. I actively tried to make that frame rate drop and I couldn't get it to budge once. The environments are lush and varied. The animations are beautifully fluid. It's perfect. The Ratchet series has always been called the Pixar of video games, and in this game they absolutely hit that marker. I have zero issues with how the game looks. What I have issue with is how the film's integrated into the plot. I don't mean from a story stance, I mean from an editing stance. The editing is incredibly sloppy, and the scenes shown never feel satisfying because they just end. This is obviously done because they can't adapt the film scenes around the game, and because they're being taken out of context, but it still feels poorly edited together. There's even a point near the end of the game where the screen just goes black in the middle of a movie scene, just to avoid a tiny spoiler or a scene change. Moreover, the way the film scenes get cut in and out never feels earned in the gameplay. We do a thing and we get a movie bit that only barely ties into the plot. It's jarring at times. The cutscenes in-game often do a better job of conveying plot to the player, even if they look kinda weird. This is where the game's budget shows a bit. You get these sort of emotionless visual performances out of the character models at times, even when the voices are on point. I can honestly give this a pass though, considering how low the budget of the game is, and it doesn't take away from the experience to me at all. And the fact that everything else about the game looks perfect just evens it out to me. As for the voice performances, outside of two clunkers in Bella Thorne and not Sylvester Stallone, it's top-notch. The sound in this game in general is fantastic. Composer Michael Bross, who took over in 2011 starting with Ratchet and Clank All for One, has finally hit his stride. Before this, he composed primarily these big, swinging, orchestrated performances that, while they sounded good, they weren't good Ratchet sounds. This game though, oh my god. I honestly think this game might have the best soundtrack in the series. It's a wonderful mix of old and new, with this classic style techno beat meshing and resonating perfectly with this epic orchestra style in the background.
As somebody who's never played the series before, the soundtrack plays up the grandiose scale of the universe within the context of the game, and it makes the game feel bigger than it is.
For the first time since maybe Mario Galaxy, I just had to stop for a minute and sit in awe at the soundtrack at times. That combined with how many times I just took a moment to look out into the vista and just take it all in, I can't describe the impact this game has at times. This, bar none, is the best movie game ever made in every way. All things considered, I think this game is as perfect as you will ever get in terms of presentation. And for that reason, I'm gonna give it a golden bolt. You ever go and see your favorite band live? You hear most of your favorite tracks and they sound phenomenal, but then there are some that are just missing or feel a bit off to you? And then you get a track off the new album that just sounds mediocre? That's kinda what this game is. It's a best of for the first game and at points the entire series, and while some levels feel absolutely perfect, even better than in the original game, others feel less than stellar. I dearly miss some of the levels that were cut from the first game just to remaster this one, especially having played the lackluster at best original levels made for this game. It's by no means a cohesive experience because it's just got a mess of a plot going on, but it's definitely a Ratchet game you have to pick up.
The best part is that the game acts as a great introduction to newer players.
It's only $40, and I legitimately feel that if the movie is taken as a supplementary material to the game, that some of the plot issues will just fall away, leaving us with the example of how Ratchet can be done.
So that's it for Ratchet and Clank. What'd you think?
I thought it was a very good game. The gameplay is very easy to pick up, being a first-time player of the series. I'm not used to third-person shooters, so getting used to it was not very hard. The learning curve was right on point. Looks beautiful. Kept my attention for the whole game. Most games don't keep my attention, so it was good in that regard. The story was a little disjointed, but overall, I had a good time playing it.
And that's good to hear. Like I said, that's coming from somebody who's never played the series before. So, with that said, we're going to move on. Ratchet and Clank was incredibly solid experience, and I'm hoping that this is the start of something, a renaissance for the series. With that said, put this down and mentally prepare myself because it is time. Next week, I am going to tackle Shamu's Deep Sea Adventures on the PlayStation 2. You want to join me for that one?
As long as we don't forget to hit the crub.
What? So this week we're tackling the brand new Ratchet and Clank game on PS4. I know you were going for it.
I was trying to do the Vera Farmiga, Vera White, Sean Hannity.
So, This is all going in. So, this week we're going to tackle the brand new Ratchet & Clank game on PS4. It's...
Vanna White.
I don't know why I signed up for this.